IDK. That could be like Claude WC or something. Dun 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 dun. I think that if that was like put on a harp or something, I'm really not sure what instrument, it would be like Claude WC. Welcome. This is the first episode of IDK with Caroline Yost. IDK, what does that mean? It means I don't know. It's okay if you don't know. Oops. You're all trying. I just hit my closet door with my glockenspiel mallet. I made up that song. I just started playing the first note, and then I was like, oh, I hear Claude Debussy song. I'm gonna freaking do it. Let's go. All right, I hope you enjoy.
What do you think, podcast or show? Do you like thinking of your podcast as a podcast or your podcast as a show?
I like to think of it as a podcast.
As a podcast.
Yeah, because there's so much shame around having a podcast. And, why shy away?
Don't shy away.
Yeah.
Right. And, who knows what it is, right?
Totally.
Is it a podcast,
totally.
a show? It's just, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter, maybe.
If you're bringing your notion of what a podcast is to it, that's not mine.
And I have to say, when I had this idea, it definitely felt like an idea for a podcast.
Yeah.
So, there's a dog outside. I probably should.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
She'll be happier.
There's going to be a dog for everyone listening at home. There's going to be a dog right here. Okay, and who knows? Maybe
You found
we'll just have to kind
us. Come up.
Yeah.
Come up.
Just so
Come up.
she likes to go pee and poo in here, so.
So this dog is nervous. Do you want me to close the door?
Oh, yeah, I'll do that.
This dog is a nervous dog. I like to do this bit with dogs when I first meet them where, you're not supposed to, come at them aggressively, but I thought it's funny to do that as just kidding. But it really scared this dog, and then she hid behind Caroline and made, scared sounds.
Yeah.
So then I actually regretted it and was like,
And you did a lot of work in the moment to kind of, show her that that's not what you were about, actually.
Yes. But it just made me think about how animals... do they have senses of humor in any sense? But anyway.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It might be a little advanced for them.
Yeah.
They definitely like to play games.
They play games.
And play is, an element of humor.
Yes, it's true. Fear and then relaxation of fear.
Yes, it's part of a
laughter and babies.
Elicits laughter and babies, indeed.
Yeah.
So, and that's something I didn't know.
Yeah.
And the podcast, this podcast that I had the idea for at 5 a.m. in the middle of the night is called IDK with Caroline Yost. And here's the idea of the podcast. I feel like in the past few years at least, I've been feeling this sense that I've been censoring myself in some way, because I'm afraid that what I say is gonna be sound stupid or come across to other people as stupid, or evil, stupid or evil. And in that sense, I've just in my work, my comedy, I've then just made everything so unbelievably stupid. So there's no way to be well, that's stupid, because it's of course it's stupid. It's intentionally designed to be stupid.
That. Yeah.
And then, but I've had this thought that I'm well, I have all these other ideas that I am interested in exploring, but I don't know how to explore them, and I don't know if they fit into my comedy, and I don't know if anyone would be interested in them, and and I don't know if anyone else has these feelings, you know what I mean? And having this, and so the idea of the podcast is to be able to share, almost embracing this sense of not knowing, and rather than it being something that clams me up or prevents me from exploring certain ideas or following certain impulses I have, to embrace it and have this podcast be a place where anyone can sort of say anything and be I don't know, you know what I mean? we don't have to, like, come on and, like, say things that are, like, smart or really prepared or, like, anything that, like, we know a lot about or have, like, done a bunch of research on. And hoping that this might be something that, like, other people have some sense of too. I don't know. Or, like, if they feel as though they sense this in their own life, and, like, kind of just, like, making a podcast that is, like, in support of people having, like, an attitude that is, like, kind of about not knowing and, like, embracing that and sharing that in some way. Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So, I want to show you. And as Sarah, and so I'm Caroline Yost. I'm a comedian living in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm here with my good friend Sarah Wilson, who's also a comedian living in Brooklyn, New York. And I invited you on, Sarah, because I was like, you are a friend of mine who is insightful and thoughtful and who I feel comfortable talking about stuff I don't know anything about. You know what I mean? I'm just like, oh, I could, like, talk through this idea with you and, like, hopefully get a better sense of what I'm doing. But also, like, because I kind of, like, in the spirit of the thing, wanted to come to this less with, like, a plan and more like okay, I'm just gonna, like, have conversations with people. And that's going to guide it. And so I have, like, some values or, like, principles or ideas that we're eventually gonna talk through that are, like, supposed to guide the conversations. And, like, that's the thing, like, rather than having a topic to discuss, like, more like those structures are, like, supposed to be what prompts the talk.
I see.
You know?
Yes. It's like on Pete Holmes's podcast. You made it weird. Their structure is.
What is it?
When they started the podcast, it was every episode they talk about what do you think God is.
Oh my God.
What's the hardest you've ever laughed?
Oh.
And then there's, like, a third thing, which is, like, love or something. Like, what's going on in love life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's the structure?
That's what's supposed to be the structure, but a lot of times they would just, like, get into it. And then in the end, he'd be like, wait, what do you think God is? What's the hardest you've ever laughed?
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's funny because that was a podcast I did listen to a lot at a certain period of time.
Yeah.
And it made me interested in stand-up.
Wow.
Because I was, like, more, you know, like a sketch character.
Yeah, more
improv kind of.
Interdisciplinary
performer. And then I was like, I'm going to do stand-up. And now I'm kind of back at, like, maybe I don't have to do stand-up.
Hell yeah.
I just do whatever I do, and it's good.
Can I give a little bit of this cracker to the dog?
I think so, but she might come back for some more.
You could have a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to read... So, and then, as you know, Sarah, I'm going through something right now in my internal development that I think is good, but it has me, like, reading a lot, and it makes me just want to try something like this and have this, I don't know, kind of attitude.
Yeah, I would describe to the listener who doesn't know that Caroline's doing kind of an exploration of consciousness and the depths of awareness and different ways of being in the world and connecting, being aware of oneself and the relationship between inside and outside.
That's amazing. Thank you. So, that's better than I could have said it myself. And so it has me reading a lot, and I have this book, and I already sent you this, but I think part of also my interest in this not knowing idea is, like, oh, maybe by embracing not knowing, you can actually, like, arrive at something that is, like, more true than, like, what you would think is true or something at the beginning. And so this is just, like, a little passage. This is this book called Transcending the Levels of Consciousness, The Stairway to Enlightenment. And it's by this guy, David Hawkins, who... It's pretty interesting. This is, like, the fourth book in the series, and like, honestly, I read like 200 pages of this book, and it was all really connecting to me until like recently, and then I'm like, okay, but you know, anything like that. Anyways, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in here that could be helpful to people who are interested in developing their spirit.
Okay, I'm gonna close my eyes.
Close your eyes and think about the passage, and I invite everyone listening to close their eyes as well. Okay. While facts, when logically assembled, can be cited as proof, truth is of a different level of abstraction and can only be substantiated by other means of confirmation. Even at best, the human mind, in and of itself, is intrinsically unable to discern fact from truth and truth from falsehood. The discernment of truth is supported by humility and the spirit of balanced, integrous inquiry. A classic example is that the Wright brothers, who were ridiculed by the fact that aircraft were heavier than air and therefore unable to fly. Selected facts can lead to very erroneous conclusions is well exemplified by the argument of skepticism. So, what I get from this is like this idea that like, you know, people like think that they know a lot about themselves, or they think that they know a lot about their experiences, but that like without like interrogating the things that you know or that you think that you know, you might actually like be believing in some type of illusion of like the truth rather than like the more true thing. And so this I think just speaks to that idea that it's like, oh, maybe by choosing to speak on something that you like have an inkling of but you haven't like totally figured out yet, or something that is occurring to you in the moment rather than something that you've like pre-planned to say, like you can actually like arrive at like some more true conclusion.
Yeah.
And that seems freeing to me or something.
Yeah. It makes me think of, not to get us too off the...
No, it's okay. Go. You're my guest. You must speak. You must speak.
Netflix has been trying to get me to watch this docu-series called Killer Sally. Have you seen the thumbnail for this?
No.
It's about a lady bodybuilder who's married to a man bodybuilder.
Oh.
And she ends up murdering him.
She kills him.
him.
And her name is Sally.
His name is Sally.
Indeed.
And Killer Sally is like her moniker from like, she also did like to make money videos where she like wrestles like dudes who want to be dominated.
Oh.
And they would call her Killer Sally. Like she wouldn't have sex with them, but it was like, you know.
It was a kinky
sexual. It was a kinky thing.
Yeah.
And she ends up killing her husband, and because he's abusive.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah, it's true from the beginning. Like, she calls 911 and is like, I just shot my husband because he was trying to hurt me. And there's a lot of stuff in there, but to the point, she is about to... I watched the first 2 episodes of it, because the first episode was like, just kind of the context of like bodybuilding, what it meant in the 80s and 90s to be a woman bodybuilder, to marry a man bodybuilder, like steroids in the community, like all the stuff, which I found very interesting. Then the next episode was about their relationship and what led them to like... her ending up killing him and the abuses in their family. And I thought, it was all kind of sad, and it was making me a little bit sick to watch it as like one of these like really slick, like aesthetic Netflix documentaries. But I was just interested in the subject matter. But then it got into the 3rd episode, and that's when the rest of it was just going to be about like the legal battle around like women who are abused killing their abusers, and this kind of thing. And the prosecutor in the case came on camera, and he was just so arrogant right off the bat about like, oh, I watched the tape of her when she goes to the police office that night after she kills her husband, and she just doesn't seem remorseful because she like took a nap on the floor, and if someone really felt like guilty about what they did, they wouldn't have been able to sleep. And like he just starts making these statements that are like so intellectually arrogant, and it was making me think about just the pseudoscience of the law, and that like these sorts of things are being used to evaluate like whether or not this woman should go to prison for the rest of her life. Like it's all just so facetious. And then it was just also, now you saying this making me think of like the truth is maybe the woman wasn't totally remorseful.
Yes.
But that doesn't really have a bearing on whether or not what she did, like the whole context of her situation as an abused person and the action that she felt she had to take to protect herself. Like, and this man is just concerned with some kind of Psych 001 definitions of remorse and, aggravated
and like, could this woman be some type of psychopathic killer?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can we diagnose her with this or that? And it was just like, you, for the fact that you know the law so well, are like formulating the answer to this question and ignoring the reality of like the meaning of this kind of situation.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, I'm like, there's so much in like, if you kill someone, it's like, maybe it's sort of, I don't know, maybe it's sort of beautiful for her to lay on the ground and take a nap. Yeah. She's like,
it's over.
Acknowledging the moment and it's over and she finally gets to rest also, and it's like he's not coming back, so like why not just like be with the spirit? Oh my gosh. This dog.
Totally.
See, we have to look around now.
Yeah. I just like, how can you rationalize what a person should or shouldn't do in that kind of moment? Like, I have no understanding of where I would be at emotionally.
Yeah.
If you're really tired.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And honestly, the more I get into this kind of like consciousness lifestyle, the less and less I'm like concerned with like the law or like the idea that like laws are right and just or like I'm just like, and anyone who like prescribes to that wholeheartedly, and it's just like I think it's just,
lost.
It's lost for sure.
So I stopped watching the show because I was just like, wow, you're about to get away from the thing that I'm interested in, which is just, I guess, human culture and relationships and the sad thing that happened, and get into like the law, which I find to be so like unconcerned with like justice and truth.
Yes.
So I don't want to watch it.
It's alienating.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's alienated from justice and truth. And it's the exact thing that it claims to be concerned with. So what do we think about that?
Exactly.
Okay, and then I wanted to just do one more thing before we go into my principles and values, etc. I don't know what to call it. I mocked something up on a computer here for Sarah to look at.
Oh, wow. Mocked it up.
I mocked up something.
Mocked it right up.
So this is sort of
Wait, William says what type of cat litter?
I just want him to choose. It's too late.
Oh, wow.
I mocked up a podcast. What is this called? Poster or something?
Yeah, that's a poster. It's a thumbnail.
And
album cover.
IDK with Caroline Yost. And I'm wondering, does it remind you of anything?
It reminds me of What the Fuck with Mark Maron.
Indeed. So let me just something to you. Sarah's right on the money here.
Yep.
There we go.
It is.
And right underneath the image of mine, IDK with Caroline Yost, I had the podcast design for WTF with Mark Maron.
And so what I'm looking at here is 3 big letters, just like the WTF, which becomes the IDK.
Yes.
And where it would say with Mark Maron, it says with Caroline.
Yeah, with Caroline Yost. And then it's an image of me.
The head kind of sticks up into the frame.
Sticks up. And we have our own types of expressions on our faces.
Totally. But I thought you were going to ask me, like, what I thought of the poster design. And I was going to be like, well, it doesn't really capture your hair.
Yes. The hair had to kind of be cut off for some reason.
But then when I see the reference image, I'm like, his hair kind of looks like that, so.
Yeah. He's also, I think he's drawn in his reference image. And mine's a photograph. But part of why I bring up WTF with Mark Maron is because when I, like, conceived of this, like, I had this idea. I was like, IDK with Caroline Yost. And I was like, it's like WTF with Mark Maron. It's brilliant. And what's funny about it is, like, I think it was, like, on my mind because Edie Modica, who's a friend and comedian, had just shared the thing about, like, Jeremy Strong. Mark Maron did an interview with Jeremy Strong where he calls actors wounded healers. I feel like that is sort of like prescient to like what I'm doing here. Funny. And I, by the way, have never listened to WTF.
Wow, that's awesome.
Like, I have never ever listened to it. I've heard that they're incredible interviews, whatever.
Yeah.
But I kind of think it's funny for, like, my podcast that is about not knowing to reference a podcast, like, in its imagery and in its, like...
Because you don't know anything about
framing, because I don't know anything about that podcast, but there's something in my heart that is telling me that there is some kind of spirit. Like, this, like, whatever Mark Maron's WTF is, like, this is my WTF. IDK with Caroline Yost is what WTF Martin Maron, but it's like my equivalent.
Coming from your heart.
Coming from my heart.
Yeah.
And so I just think that is kind of funny.
That is funny.
And I like that. And I like that that's part of the foundation of the
Hell yeah.
thing.
And I think people will get that.
Yeah. So, okay, let's get into it. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to talk you through the principles, values, qualities, I don't know exactly what to call it, of like what I want to guide the conversations that I have with people on the podcast. And because I do want it to feel like a collaboration, like what we talk about and what we explore is like something that we kind of like, whoever I'm talking to, like we both come up with in the moment. And I'm doing this actually because I like this writer, Clementine Morrigan, who's like this like leftist anarchist Canadian type person who has a podcast called Fucking Cancelled.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it because I guess Felipe started listening to it. And he texted me to be like, I'm listening to this podcast that Caroline listens to. But then he like maybe sent me a part of it to listen to, but I haven't listened to it. So I wish I had now.
Well, it's funny because I hadn't listened to it. He started listening to it before me. And he was like, I've been listening to this podcast by this person you like. But I share their stuff. So Clementine Morgan makes all these like Instagram paneled writing things. And I've been sharing their stuff. So, and I don't know if that's how he found the podcast. I haven't actually talked to Felipe about it. But Clementine and their co-host did this at the beginning. And, like, part of it is that, like, they're talking about, like, cancel culture and, like, something that they call the nexus, which is, like, social media and cancel culture and all this stuff. And it's obviously really sensitive. And so I think, like, and they want to be, like, principled about it. And so it's, like, they set out forth these principles to be, like, these are the things that we can refer to so that, like, if we can like return to them and be like, if as long as we are speaking and like exploring these things like in line with these principles, then like that's what matters and like we're doing the right thing or whatever. So I was like, oh, and that put this idea in my mind where I was like, oh, maybe that can be a thing that like guides what this podcast is. Because it's almost more about cultivating a certain, like, tenor of conversation or, like, space of conversation or something that, like, could create opportunities for, like, totally unexpected, unplanned things to arise. Because, like, we don't know.
Hell yeah.
Right? Okay, so I'm going to just go through it. Okay, so, and we can talk about it. The first idea is that the conversations are going to be honest on the podcast. And in that sort of open. So I'm hoping that, like, I am making the commitment to whoever I have on that I'm going to be honest with them. And that means that, like, I'm going to be, like, listening to them and, like, responding to them in the moment. And willing to share my like real reactions to whatever they say in the moment and to not get caught up with like some type of like social nicety or like anxiety or pressure that like might lead me to not be as present with them or like not respond in a way that is honest. And also like in a way, and then this is kind of takes us into the second piece of it, which is like, I feel like sometimes I want the podcast to be funny. And I feel like sometimes like, but I don't want it to be like bits or like a place where we do funny through bits. Let's blow out the speaker.
This is a battle that I'm entrenched in.
Yes, on Sarah's own podcast, Raising an Arena.
Yeah.
Or maybe just with
and in life, but in my own podcast.
Yeah. And part of
Felipe's
that...
gonna listen to this episode and then text me.
Yeah.
Like,
He's honestly one of the main characters in the episode so far. We're talking about Felipe Dupuy, another comedian and animator living in Brooklyn.
At
And
Feloup. F-E-L-E-U-P.
Yeah. But the idea is, like, we're being funny, like, kind of through our honesty, you know what I mean? Or, like, and we're feeling, and, like, and the funniness comes from, like, lightness and, like, connection, and, like, being in the moment with each other, rather than, like, I don't want anyone who's got material to, like, come on this podcast and, like, slip their jokes into our conversation seamlessly, such that it's just, like, magic, and it's amazing.
Yeah, you got Benny Feldman on here talking about witch's potion in a big cauldron.
Yeah, if Benny tries to do anything like that on this podcast, I'm going to have to ask him to renegotiate, realign himself with the mission of the podcast. That's why I have this stuff.
That's funny.
This is why
so that you can be like, wait, we have an agreement.
Wait, we have an agreement. Yeah. You're not going to do a joke at me.
And I bring up Benny Feldman because I just saw him on a show at Life World the other night, and he is just so funny.
He's really funny.
With his one-liner jokes, and it's funny because I think of myself as someone who's like, I always used to call them jokey jokes, where it's like, this is the joke, and this is the punchline to the joke, and that's a jokey joke. But Benny Feldman he blows my mind.
Totally.
I think
he's really funny. Yeah. And he also has a podcast, but I don't know what it's called.
But also his one-liners, even as they're silly, they speak to some cosmic truths.
Cosmic truths.
Save that for his episode. So.
Yeah. So, like, that is part of it. I'm like, I like things that are humorous. The people that I like things that are humorous. Like, I don't want us... And just because we're, like, talking about ideas and, like, lofty ideas... I'm doing a lot of air quoting right now.
You're not seeing it, but...
You're not seeing it, but I'm doing a lot of air quoting. She's being
sort of self-aware of
the idea.
How that sounds.
When we're talking about ideas, like, we're still being ourselves and, like, being funny. And we're not I don't want it to be that, like, we're letting that get in the way of us having a good time. Okay, and then another idea, the next concept is heartful. And this is an effort to be like, and again, it almost follows from the funny and the bits thing. It's like, it's not, the conversations that we're having on this podcast are not of the mind. They're of the heart. So we're, like, using the heart to guide us. Yeah. And this, like, doesn't necessarily mean, like, really emotional. It just means, like, present and, like, not pre-planned. Like, I think the mind, it's like, that's when you're gonna start, like, I don't want it to feel like people are, like, coming on this podcast and feeling like, oh, I have to be funny, and so I'm getting in my head and I'm, like, trying to direct. I want to come off in a certain way, and so I'm trying to direct the conversation. I want to be smart. I want to sound smart. I don't want to sound stupid. It's like, oh no, like, it's almost like we're just, like, in the room together and we're being honest, we're being open, we're being funny.
Yes, it also makes me think of sometimes when you say something to someone, you tell them something and they're like, oh, where'd you hear that? Where'd you hear that? In my own head. Yes. In my own self. That's where I heard that. Yes. My thoughts that's where I heard it.
Yes, and that is actually another thing that's going to come up.
Oh, okay.
Right. Because that's exactly the type of thing that I want to explore. Yeah. And, because I'm not going to do any research. Like, I'm not going to do any research. I might do some contemplation ahead of the show and bring some things in that I'm curious about myself. But this is not like, and this is another maybe reaction to other podcasts that I like and have listened to over the years. It's in conversation with them. But, like, this isn't like a Trap House where, like, Will Menaker has, like, a little agenda that they go through and they do their commentary on. Or even, like, a Bad Faith where Brie has, like, a conversation with someone. She interviews someone who, like, really knows their shit, like they're an expert. Yeah. I'm not going to pretend that that's the kind of person that I am and that, like, that's a kind of level of conversation that I'm, like, interested in having. Like, I really want it to be, like, connecting in the moment with a person from the heart and, like, seeing what kind of things we can explore on that, from that impulse. Yes. And so then the idea is, like, the next thing is inquiry. Which is honestly the first one I wrote down.
I see that.
But I've kind of reordered them, trying to, just kind of
flow
through them. So, and in that sense, it's like we're investigating ideas on the podcast. And that the inquiry is like not to be dampened by any like preconceived ideas or notions that we have about ourselves or something. So it's like having this like, and I think of inquiry as like something that you're like, and maybe curiosity is like another word for it, but it's like you're taking this like leap to explore something that you don't know if you know that much about, and you're sort of like inquiring into it and going deeper with it and seeing what comes of that. And then also, like, and I'm not even sure, like, I have this other part of it. This is one of these I don't know moments.
Here we go.
Here we go.
The inaugural
I don't know. IDK. But, like, the idea, like, I have this impulse to say I want this podcast to be more about ideas than about emotions.
Whoa. Whoa. That comes as a bit unexpected to me.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Because I want it to be feeling, like I want it to come from a place of like, you can have feelings about things. Because like part of this is like tapping into intuition, which is actually the next on the list. But like, it's like, I want there to be an element of feeling, but I can't decide if it's like, and I don't want to like commit to the emotion thing. Like, it's not about emotions right now, because I don't want anyone
to feel like their emotions are banned.
Yes, or like if they talk about themselves, because also it's going to seem kind of confusing when I talk through the last couple principles and values on the list, because we're going to be like, wait, but aren't emotions sort of like wrapped up in that?
Yeah.
And also like the heartfulness is like, oh, isn't the emotions like heartfulness? That's like empathy and stuff, like, and that's about having emotions with and for other people or whatever. But I think that it's like I want it to be on the level of ideas, because I'm trying to separate, like, in the conversations that we have, of like this like sense of like ego or something that is like, and personality. Like I feel like in like comedy, and I imagine that probably most people I'm gonna have on the show are comedians, but that's who I know.
Yeah,
it's who I know.
That's who I know. That's who my friends know.
That's who my friends know as well. But I'm like, I feel like it's like, oh, there's so much like persona and like personality, and like leading with personality, and like, oh, my personality is delightful, and like that's what makes everyone like love me and makes me so funny and stuff. And I'm almost like, and I think that kind of comes from like an emotional place or like a fear-based place of like, I need to be this way so that people will like me or accept me or like give stuff for me or value me.
Give stuff for me
or value me as well.
Yeah.
And I think that is like a really emotional place to be coming from. And I'm kind of like interested in being like, is there a way that we can like cultivate a like conversation that helps you like detach from that emotional place and just like engage with your own ideas?
This makes me think of
yes.
One of the most painful fights I ever got into with a friend was right after college, and we went on a trip together, one of my childhood friends, and they, in the wake of our childhood, had become kind of an anarchist and friends with a lot of like freegans and people who are like rejecting traditional ideas of success and employment. And I tried to bring it up, maybe if they heard this, they'd be like, well, you didn't do a good job of this. But I tried to bring it up as sort of like, purely as an idea of like, this is an idea that is inside me from our society, where when I meet people at this age of where I'm 22, when I meet people who have rejected traditional ideas of success in society, my bias against them is that they couldn't be successful, and so they had to reject it in order to like maintain their sort of sense of self here.
Right.
And that I wanted to be the kind of person who could be successful in the traditional sense, but then chooses on top of that to be like, fuck the man. Yeah. But if I see certain people being like, fuck the man, I'm like, oh, well, you just had to do that because
You're not trying hard enough.
Because you weren't trying hard enough, you weren't working hard enough or something like that. But I knew, even when I was saying it to my friend, that I was like, that's not right. But that's in me. It's like a bias that I have in me. And I wanted to like extract that and say that. And my friend was so hurt by what I said and like really, really angry at me. And it was really painful because I was like, I'm just trying to say this is like an idea that exists that I feel has kind of contaminated myself. But I don't want it to be attached to me and my personality and like our friendship in a certain way. I just want to discuss like why is that in me?
Yes, because I would like to think that I could like detach this idea from any judgment on you or something.
Yes,
but when you hear it, because it's like unflattering, it feels like it's a judgment
hurtful
on you.
Yes, to this person. So that honestly doesn't even just relate to the last point. It kind of relates to all of it. Just like this relationship between our ideas and ourself and the people that we're talking to and trying to explore things without it feeling so personal. Even though it's like it is personal. Two people talking, you're a person.
Yes.
It's all personal, but wanting to just have a little bit more space, I feel like, to just say things without it being like, I'm judging you. You're feeling judged by me. It's like,
and I think that that's like also where the idea of not knowingness comes in, because it's like, oh, like when I hear something that has the potential to hurt me, it's like trying to embrace the sense it's like, I don't know what that person meant by saying that, and like I don't know if that was their intention, and like if I'm in that space, it's like, why don't I just like believe in the thing that is like loving and good and give them the benefit of the doubt in what they've said, that like they're saying this from like an honest place and like it's being said for a reason, and that, like there is a way in which like this could be supportive or good or whatever.
And also that all the bad things in our society exists in like them sort of the minds and hearts of people, and that those people aren't evil necessarily or bad, and they're just propagated this way. Rice. So
yummy rice.
But that's a complicated issue, and I'm sure there's other people who would be like, but in certain cases of this or that, so
absolutely.
So fine in certain cases.
Sarah's looking at the microphone right now and trying to make eye contact with everyone.
I'm trying to say
just
yes.
Thank you.
That I'm open also to someone disagreeing with that idea of the depersonalization of ideas.
Ideas, totally. But we're interested in exploring the possibility. And we're exploring. Yeah. And then the last two things I'll like say at the same time, and I think like that's what's kind of weird about like laying out all these ideas too, is like there's so much that's like in communication between all of them. But I thought that it would be helpful to try to describe qualities, especially like, you know, like your friend who in the past I've been like, one of your greatest gifts is that you think and you feel at the same time.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's something like, Caroline diagnosed me with. That's been illuminating.
Dr. Yost. Dr. Yost takes us in the office now. Yes. It's going to feel like therapy when you come on this show. But it is what philosophy. Something like that, you know? See, okay, that's the kind of bit that's allowed.
That's allowed.
So a bit that is like, you've never done it before and you're inspired in the moment to do it.
It's very related to the moment.
You can do those bits. That's very related to the moment, but no bits like that.
Brought in and then seamlessly integrated.
As
if you just thought.
Yes, I don't want that. The first comedian I ever saw do that, like, and I was like, wow, we're really doing this out here, was Moshe Kasher.
Really?
I had, like, read his book, and then, like, I was on YouTube. I was kind of a fan, and I was, like, on YouTube, and I was, like, watching his appearances, and I saw him make jokes that he had written in the book, like, as if, like, they were just, like, flying off the tip of his tongue.
I remember learning that as a kid, that, like, oh, the comedians have their set, and these are their stories. And then when they go onto an interview show, the producer is like, what do you want to talk about? And they're like, I want to talk about this many times I went to the dentist. So then they get set up for that by the host.
Wow.
Who's like, oh, yeah, so didn't you have, like, an appointment yesterday? Or, you know, and then they get to, like, act as if they just...
Right. Yeah. It's just, And, like, to me, that's not very alive.
No.
You know what I mean?
No,
that's kind of...
No, that's dead. Dead on arrival.
That's dead on arrival.
Yeah.
And I like to think that in life there's a lot more, like, motion and movement and fluidity than that.
Typically.
That's what I'm trying to...
But at the same time, stillness.
Stillness as well. It's so dynamic. Interesting and dynamic. It's something that has come in my whole journey right now. I know I'm getting a little bit sidetracked, but we're going to get there. Is like the symbol of the yin yang.
Yeah, that's really speaking to you right now.
It really started speaking to me. me in a way that is like a little bit embarrassing because I'm like, it's just like, you know, like the yin yang tattoo, like it becomes like such a cliche like symbol of like spirituality and stuff. And like, and already like in American culture, like spiritual people are like so mocked and it's just like humiliating to like identify with these things in a way, but like also trying to be like, I actually think there's like a lot of wisdom in the symbol of the yin yang. Like if you separate it from all the people like you think that it means, like what you think it means, it's like if you like start investigating it. So if you have never looked up yin yang,
look it up and take a look at the image.
I would take a look at the image and maybe take a look at some type of description of it and see what speaks to you about that. I'm not gonna go into it right now.
Wait, before we go to the next one, can we just go over the ones we already hit?
Okay, so what we've already hit is honesty and openness as some type of subsection of that. Funny. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, that's it. Honesty, funny, heartful, inquiry, and that comes along with the ideas, emotion kind of question. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've done so far.
Got it. Okay. That's 4.
And then there's intuitive. I want the conversations to have an intuitive quality, or like the principle of being intuitive.
Yeah.
And then I'll add this because I think they're related. Experiential. So like there's an experiential element to the podcast as well. And the intuitive kind of speaks to what I already said to you in response to what you said before of like there's no research.
That's right.
I'm not doing research. I'm not going to walk you through like facts and like give you my commentary like I know anything about anything at all. But also like the intuition piece like speaks to like the desire for like on the podcast for like me and my guests to be like sensitive and present with each other, and like that's like the thing from which the conversation blooms or whatever. And then experiential, which is another thing, which is like we're not doing topical news. We're not doing things that we've read about. We're not talking about things that we've read about on Twitter. We're not talking about conversations that we're seeing other people have online. We're like talking about like experiential, like our direct experience in relationship to an idea or concept or like phenomenon. Yeah. And then...
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I feel like sometimes you really get trapped, though, by, like, our challenge to ever even have a conversation. I guess here's what I'm thinking about is, like, right now, today, in the world, I'm thinking about what's going on in Iran.
Right.
Did you read this news about...
No, I haven't been reading.
Well, I just read just a little bit today. There's this big headline that they've decided to sentence all of the protesters that they're holding in prison to death.
Oh my god.
It's like 14,000 people.
Are you serious?
Yes,
oh,
yes.
That's horrible.
Yes, and it's so horrible.
Oh my god, are they gonna do it?
I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even have brought this up.
Oh, it's okay.
But it's one of those things where I'm like, I can imagine bringing it up on my own podcast or in conversations with people, and like I think when people hear world news, even if it's just something really serious, it's just kind of like you shut down a little bit where you're like, well, I don't know what to say about that. I need to read the articles or whatever. But it's like this stuff does live in our everyday life. Yes. So I feel like you can talk about your experience of this thing.
Totally.
And how to understand what's going on.
Yes, and I think that it is like, yes, and thank you for this beautiful example of the way that news could be discussed on the podcast. Yeah. Where it's like, it can come up if it's like something that is like living in your like inner conscience or whatever. Yeah. But like for it to come up to be like a thing like, well, this is trending and now I'm gonna say my 2 cents about it. Yes, it's like to have that kind of like sort of like frivolous, hard attitude towards something.
Kind of like detaches you from it even more, and it just becomes this like object.
Yes, or like something that you can't engage with, or like you won't allow yourself to engage with because the mind is like, I need to know something about that, or like I need to read about that to be able to speak to it. And it's like, actually, no, there might actually be an incredible wealth of inner wisdom inside of us, ancient wisdom inside of us, or like bodies. So we lived on this planet for so long. There's like stuff that like part of what I think has been like really exciting to me about my journey into consciousness that Sarah so aptly laid out at the beginning is that, oh my god, my foot fell asleep, is that things that I am reading about in some of these books are things that have occurred to me on my own, through my own experience and engagement and like contemplation of these things or whatever. And like that has been very exciting, where it's like, oh, if I like am doing work to like tap into like my own insights, like I might actually be able to like, and maybe I don't have all the words that I need to like express the thing yet, but I like tap into some type of like truth or knowledge that like no one else has to tell me for me to like know and understand and like connect with the truth of or something.
Totally.
And I think that is like a really cool, it's really empowering. It's like a really cool
totally
thing that like humans have the potential to do. And like I want more people to do that and to like trust themselves and to like believe that like their experience and their thoughts and their ideas and like all of that, it's like just because there's like all of this like media and chatter and like experts out there, like those people don't necessarily know any better than you do. And I like believe in people being empowered to like know themselves and to like share themselves. And like that's, to me, I'm like, that's where it all begins or something.
Totally. Yeah.
So I think like we've like, I don't know, like
go back to the you did inquiry.
I did inquiry.
You got
experiential. Yeah, I kind of, I mean, did you want to go into those a little bit more, intuitive and experiential? I kind of combine them together and they are sort of different.
No, I think that made sense.
Okay. Do you think, so I wrote outstanding questions. I think this was going to be, so like now I've walked the listener and Sarah Wilson through all of these things that I have in mind that I'd like to guide the podcast, IDK with Caroline Yost. And then I was going to be like, what are my outstanding questions about this? Which is like, and maybe I'll ask Sarah some of these now. And we'll see what occurs to me. Because I had, when I wrote it down on this piece of paper, I had an idea of what those outstanding questions might be. And right now, I don't really know if I know what they are. But do you think people will like listening to this?
That's the number one question.
Right? Because it is kind of hard to pin down.
I think people will like being on the podcast. And when people like being on a podcast, I think other people like listening to it.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I think it's things people want to talk about that they'll be happy to be given the space to be sincere.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I like that, so maybe I'm projecting, but...
Right. I know you love this and you want more of it.
Yes, totally. Yeah. Like, when you just get asked to, like, just be honest, it just can feel like such a, like, oh. But I know other people don't feel that way. A lot of comedians don't feel that way.
Right.
But I feel like I'm, like, this is, so now I'm getting a little bit too into my own thing. But I'm, like... sincere feelings, earnest feelings on top, jokes on bottom. And a lot of comedians, jokes on top, sincere feelings on bottom.
And concealed.
In a box. Hidden, buried. Box. Yeah. So I feel like I'm really not funny and I'm not making a lot of jokes with people that I don't know. But then once I really sincerely know people, I'm like really being silly a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But I always like to start by being earnest. So it feels more relaxing to me to be in that mode.
Yes.
Especially if someone I don't know, if I'm just going on someone's podcast. But he might not feel that way. But I think people do want to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Because we are living in kind of a, I don't know, a weird, like, fucked up sort of generational change moment. Like, I've been thinking about, we're not, maybe in Gen Z, we're cusp people. We're millennial Gen Z cusp.
Yeah.
And, I was talking to one of my coworkers the other day. Everybody I work with is like 19 or 23.
Okay, a little bit younger. Yeah.
So they're a little bit younger.
And they're at the beginning of their wild 20s.
Yes. And they're people who've always been online, you know, like since they were little kids, basically. Yeah. And that is massive. And I remember always feeling a lot of guilt about the fact that I spent a lot of time when I was young on the internet, like being like, that wasn't, you shouldn't have been on Facebook that much. You should have been outside being with, you know, nature or something. But now just realizing like, no, that's a fact of our reality. It's something that's happening, you know, in our culture and civilization, and like it's okay. It's not your personal like fault if anything bad comes from that, but it is something to kind of figure out what it all means. Yeah, and I feel like there's so much struggle going on with like obviously like mental illness and addiction and isolation and these things, and it's like ever present in people's minds to wanting to be like resolving these kinds of things. So yeah,
and I feel like there's like a way of like inquiry that's like on this level that is like, if I may go there, like more in the direction of like the spirit or something than like mental health talk that like has the potential to help people, because actually it's a little bit like what we were talking about a little bit before we started recording, which I'm like, and maybe this is like another idea that's behind the podcast, but I don't think it should necessarily be one that is like listed in my doctrine. But like the concept of like surrendering, like that, the idea of like I don't know is like throwing your hands over being like I don't know, like why don't I just do it? You know what I mean? Or like why don't I just try? Or like why don't I just think about this? Like, and surrendering to the idea that like you don't have to know everything, and like you don't even have to fully understand yourself.
Yes,
like that might like help or like cause some sort of relief or like be beneficial or like interesting or like maybe even a little bit funny in a way to like some people.
So I'm not even saying it's like, oh, the podcast is going to be about these like serious dark things about what's going on in the world necessarily, but I think people have a hunger for some
some space
other
to
way
do
of thinking
some
about
type
things
of
and a space of exploring that.
That's amazing. Oh, thank you.
Happy.
That is making my heart sing. And honestly, I have to say, people might not like to hear this, I'm just so proud of myself.
Carolyn thought of this idea Saturday at like 3 a.m.
I thought this like in the middle of the night, and then like immediately I acted on it, and I'm like, this is the kind of thing that like I could, in the past, I might have felt so embarrassed to do, like so afraid of doing it. I would have overthought it. I would have like put on some type of affectation or attempt to like talk intelligently, like in a way that would just like totally undermine my ability to like, or funny, or in a way that I thought was funny or something, in a way that would like totally undermine my ability to like actually do what I'm trying to do right now. And I want to say also, I'm like, part of this is like to comedians who might be haters, or
and there's a lot of them.
Any listeners out there who might be haters on what's happening right now. One, you don't have to listen.
Yeah.
And also, you don't have to come on the podcast.
Totally.
And also, like, part of my interest in doing this is, like, this honestly first got cultivated in my comedy. Like, what I feel like I'm going through right now is, like... And I know that other people have totally different... Every comedian has their own approach. It's so personal. I mean, some people have hard and fast, like, traditionally inherited rules about, like, what comedy's supposed to look like and how it's supposed to be. But, like, I think, like, when you're, like, really just, like... When you're just, like, talking about, like, artistry and the artist and stuff like that, it's, like, everyone has their own approach, and it's, like, totally valid for people to do whatever they like. And... I'm like, I felt like my way of being the funniest that I could be was by cultivating presence in the moment and in the room. And, like, that was, like, the thing that gave me access to, like, actually be the funniest. And maybe it's not, like, the thing that it certainly hasn't yielded a type 5. But, like, I think it's, like... Been
really beneficial.
Really beneficial to, like, me being a better artist and a funnier comedian and, like, someone who's, like, more of a pleasure to watch and, like, someone who has, like, a lot of charisma and a lot of command on stage. True.
Yeah.
And it's, like, a lot less, like, content-oriented and, like, a lot more kind of, like, context-oriented. And I think that that's something that, like, I've had a lot of doubt in my own, like, practice. Or I did the quotes again, by the way, everyone. But, like, it's something that I've had a lot of doubt about in my own practice, or just, like, being, like, does this, like, because I want to have a different approach, like, does this make me, like, less of, like, a real comedian or something? And I'm just, like... Anyone who has an idea, like, they don't fucking know what they're talking about. Like, that's bullshit. And, like, if you're doing something that's working, like, who cares if someone thinks it's not right or something? It's, like, it's working for you, it's working for other people. Space. It's yours, man.
Yeah.
And I just want to, like, encourage that in the world.
Yeah. I think also speaking to the haters.
Yes, we're speaking to the haters now.
Yeah. I had this thought. I feel like... Because of the life that I have lived, when, like, hearing you pitch the podcast, I'm, like, listening to it. I'm enjoying it. Like, on my level 1, I'm, like, hearing it, and I'm like, I like this. This sounds fun to me. I'm excited about it. Then on the second level, I think it's about basically anything that ever comes up, and especially anytime I'm doing an episode of my podcast, is, like, who would be hurt by this? Who would consider this to be, like, offensive in some way? What would the objection to this be? Like, what's the potential of someone being, like, well, doesn't consider take into, thought this person's experience and what it would be like if you were this person, I'm just, like, always, like, making those calculations, I feel like, whether that is a little bit, as I was thinking about it just now, I was like, that's kind of, it's almost like obsessive, like, thinking to be, like, self-protective.
And it's self-censorship in a way.
And it's self-censorship a little bit.
Like, you don't really know.
Yeah, because you don't know. And you can't, like, decide for other people what they will or won't be affected by. And I think it sometimes leads me to, like, over-consideration of things that aren't really real risks. Like, me and Will never show any clips at our Halloween Scary Show that are, like, suicide related or like certain things we'll watch and be like, oh no, we can't show that because someone could be upset by it. And it's like, probably anyone coming to the Scary Halloween Clip show understands what's in the realm of those things.
Right.
And you don't really need to censor that because we've all seen, I think, but I don't know.
Right. And in some way, like, anyone who came to the Scary Halloween show, people wouldn't come if they were someone who might...
If they really felt vulnerable to those kind of images, then they wouldn't come to it.
They wouldn't come.
So, anyway, thinking about this, I guess the only thing that came up for me was thinking when we're talking about, like, and because I brought it up, like, depersonalizing things.
Right.
That, like, to some people, issues related to, like, their identity and their history and stuff are so personal, like, you can't depersonalize them.
Yes.
But then I just thought, like, well, but this podcast is about this certain thing. It also is a personal thing. And it's, like, viewing the issues, like, not from a research background. It's like, if you want to look at issues that are deeply researched and considered in that way, that's just a different podcast.
Yes.
This is just a podcast for this one thing, and it's okay for it not to do everything and serve every perspective on how ideas can be talked about.
Yes.
So I think we're all clear.
Okay.
As far as my sort of...
I've gotten asked from Sarah Wilson at SJW.
But I anticipated, I was like, what would the haters feel? They'd be like, well, you can't just as a person get on and talk about issues you don't know anything about. And it's like, but on this podcast, you can't.
But you can, because that's what this podcast is about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow, it's cool. So. And, like, honestly, yeah. So I feel good about it.
I feel good about it.
And I don't know, like, maybe you felt like coming on today, like, this was your audition to, like, be the co-host or something.
I didn't feel that way.
Okay.
Yeah. The show's called IDK with Caroline Yost, and you already made that.
Right, and I made a poster.
And you showed it to me right away.
Yeah, well, honestly, I thought maybe it could be some type of audition. And I really enjoyed you being on the podcast. So I think that's something, like, I'm like, right now, I'm like, I think I can do it on my own. But, like, I don't know, maybe in the future, like, it would be cool for you to come on and be some kind of, or, like, a recurring guest or something. Because I think that this is, like, right in your pocket and, like, something that you've been interested in exploring yourself. And so,
well, here's my question for you about that. This is a question I have for you as a friend.
Yeah.
I often feel like when we're talking, you're someone who loves to make eye contact. Even when we're talking while you're driving, your head is fully turned 90 degrees to look at me while you're talking. And I'm looking straight ahead, but because that's what I prefer, and also as a quiet signal to you.
It's not safe.
Look ahead. So then as we were saying to do this, I already felt that I was kind of looking out the window, being like, this is so relaxing. I can see the skyline. But I was like, I wonder if when Caroline is, like, talking about these things that she feels deeply, does she want me to be, like, locked in like this? Do you notice that I'm a lot of times just, like, looking at nothing?
No, I haven't noticed at all.
You haven't even noticed. Okay, well there you go. I've wanted that for like a couple of years, really.
Yeah, I thought you were
like you're
really intense eye contact.
Yeah,
that's cool. I mean, I do like to look at the person that I'm talking to.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't bother you if they're not looking.
No, I don't really think about it that much. It doesn't. I mean, the only thing that ever bothers me in that context is, like, maybe when, like, I'm at a party and someone's doing that thing where you're, like, talking to them and they're looking, like, everywhere except for you.
Yes, that's scary.
And I think it's because I'm like, well, I like trying to, like, connect with you, and you're, like, clearly trying to not connect with me in this moment at all.
Yes.
But, I think that I haven't noticed it or been bothered by it.
Because I find that if I'm doing too much eye contact while someone's talking to me, that makes me more likely to do the little sort of, like, people-pleasing behaviors of being like,
Right.
Rather than if you're just like looking at nothing and you're just taking it in and you're like, I'm just hearing this and just thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
So.
Anyone who is interested in maybe coming on this podcast at some point, and honestly, it's open. I could honestly have anyone on this podcast.
Wow.
I think, right? Kind of seems like it, right? It's like anyone who's a human being is like qualified to be in conversation with me on this podcast. You don't have to be scared if you're not going to look at me at all. Yes. You know what I mean? And if you want, you can let me know, like when you come in the room, that's something that you're going to be like. But
if you want to do tantric eye contact,
I'm asking for it in a way.
Things I would want to talk about in the future. I've been getting really into my dreams again.
Okay.
And like my dreams, I have it when I'm sleeping.
Yes.
And then
not your dreams. I thought the world could be like.
And then another thing today that I was gonna talk about before I knew what the podcast was even about necessarily.
Oh, you just thought you were gonna come on and talk about whatever the fuck you wanted.
I did think that. I did think that, and I wanted to talk about this morning.
Preloaded.
Yeah. You're right. That's not being present. I came preloaded. I watched a documentary about ants. That I just thought was interesting.
Like the little bugs?
Like the little bugs. I thought it was interesting.
Oh. Yeah. They have like a hive mind, aren't they?
Yes.
Is that what was interesting?
Yes, that's what occurred to me. There was a tweet. A girl was like, my boyfriend was really high, and I asked him what he was thinking about, and he said ants, and then he pauses, and then he says the ant world. And it had a lot of likes. It had gone viral just for its randomness.
Yeah.
And then I sat and thought about it for a second, and I was like, the ant world is really interesting.
Yes.
And I haven't really given it its proper attention. We always are like aware of kind of the ants and their weirdness.
Yeah.
You know, peripherally, but I was like, but research, we're not supposed to be researching things.
Right.
But I watched this one movie about ants and I was like,
okay, well we'll have you on to talk about that. Yeah, you're coming back.
Yeah.
I remember once, I think someone told me this. Someone shared their knowledge with me. And they were like, if you take the queen ant out, like, you know how ants, like, walk in a straight line? Mm-hmm. If, like, the queen ant gets removed, because there's some kind of queen ant, they all start walking in a circle. Like crazy chaos.
Wow.
So I don't know.
That's crazy.
And I really don't like thinking of ants, like, in that kind of, like, heightened state. Like, the world is ending, like, what do I do? Like, all sense of my direction is gone. Like, total frenetic fear and chaos.
I hate that, too.
Yeah.
I watched a scene in the movie where this group of ants was attacking a big spider that had a sack of eggs on it, and it was a situation where I was like, I honestly don't know who I want to win. I don't like ants, and a spider with a big sack of eggs on it is like nasty to me. So like, fair fight, like go in,
fair fight, let's go.
Yeah. So anyway.
Cool. Okay, well, I think that's like, and what do you think? Do you think that the list of things that we talked through?
I think that's comprehensive.
It's comprehensive? Oh, yeah. I was going to say, do you think we should add anything else to it? I mean, there's also, like, different things have sub-things. It's like there's honest, and then I'm like, open. It's like those could be separate things. But they felt related. And again, they are all kind of related. And also, would you describe them as principles, values, or qualities? Because I clearly didn't know.
I think they're values.
Okay, values. Yeah. That's why I was like, principles was the first thing I was saying, and then I was like, I actually think they're more like values.
Yeah. A principle almost is like, I feel like a principle, you have to like live up to a principle.
Right. It's too
like lofty or something.
Yes.
But the value is just like, we care about this, and we're trying
and we're like putting this at the forefront of what we do.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then qualities is a pretty vague word.
Yeah. Qualities, I think that's just like funny, you know? But like, I value humor.
Yeah.
I think humor elevates. Cool. If you do that, you just made it loud.
The whole time I wanted to do that and I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I did.
And then she did it while we were still recording. But she didn't know.
I don't know.
And I don't know. Okay, so I think I don't really know how to end it.
But that was episode 1.
That was episode 1 of I don't care. I don't care.
Whoa.
I don't fucking care what Caroline is. Just kidding. I don't know with Caroline Yost. But does he ever say what the fuck with Mark Maron? Or is he
starts by being like, all right, what the fuckers, what the fuckaroos, what the fuck ups.
Oh wow, so he does a little bit of hosting.
So he does a little hosting.
Okay, I didn't quite do that, I don't think, at the beginning of this. But it doesn't matter, I don't care. And I don't know. I wouldn't know. Also, what do you think? Should I listen to this or should I just like put it out? Right?
I think you just put it out.
Oh, you just put it out. I just put it out,
Yeah, you don't say
right?
anything weird.
I just feel like listening to it, it's like, I'll figure out how it's going to go. Like, I don't have to know right now. Okay, thank you. This has been IDK with Caroline Yost featuring Sarah Wilson.
Bring light wherever you go. Just kidding.
Activate the light. Oh, wait. Oh, my God.
Oh, no.
I had another idea, but this might just be like... No, this is crazy. We're not going to talk about that right now. Okay, maybe some other time. Love you guys. Bring light wherever you go.